Greetings and welcome to our audience. We are in the Just One Thing for Health Physicians on Call, and we are here with Dr. Chris Miller, who is on the phone with us, so we won't be able to see her lovely face. I'm glad we got to see some pictures in the emails that went out. And I'm Velan Hawkins, your host. I'm here with Peter Goldstein and with Lisa Arnold, part of our team. And I see some familiar faces in the audience, Michelle and Arjun. Thanks for joining us this evening, and everyone else who is out there who I can't see right now. We are going to get started, and I'm going to ask Dr. Miller if she would just kind of give us a little bit of background on yourself, where you're from, how you got started in this integrated medicine field. You've got an amazing story, and I'd love for our audience to hear it from you.
Thank you. Hi, yes, this is Dr. Chris Miller, and I'm so sorry you can't see a picture of me, or I'm not talking to you in front of you live tonight, but I am live really here talking right now. I'm just traveling, so we'll do our best. But my story is I am from Chicago originally, and I was living in Colorado and practicing emergency medicine. And I started having joint pains, which rapidly progressed and took over all different joints in my body. And I was diagnosed with lupus. And I continued to work in the emergency room, and I was put on medications, and I was up to 6 medications, and I was failing them. I wasn't doing well. And my doctor said, who I saw in Denver, he said, we're going to have to try an experimental drug. And I was petrified. Obviously, it wasn't working, and I didn't know what else to do. And nobody had said anything to me about diet or lifestyle or nutrition. This is back in 2009. And at that point, nobody, not a word came out, not a peep, not from my primary doctor, not from anyone. And so I didn't know what to do. And so I started researching about lifestyle. Is it something I was doing because I work in the ER, I'm up all night? Does it have anything to do with the way I'm living? And I came up with quite a bit about nutrition and autoimmune diseases. And so I rapidly overhauled my diet into a plant-based diet. And I did that for probably 2 good years without any other changes. And I still had symptoms. I wasn't one of those stories that was, oh my gosh, everything went away. This is so great. And I did feel some better, but I definitely still had problems. And that was when I started digging deeper, and I started learning about integrative medicine and the healing powers for years and years, the mind, body, and the connection. And I'm someone who carries a lot of stress, and I worry, and I was anxious, and being sick certainly makes it worse. Everyone with chronic illness or a loved one with a chronic illness certainly knows that this is the case. And so it was really difficult, and I started learning all about how I needed to calm my mind. And it was very difficult when you're not used to a calm mind to even have a clue how to do this. And so that's what I pursued after that for a couple of years. I dove deep into it, and I still am, and it really has helped. So it's something that I use for myself and my patients now as a powerful tool to help with healing.
Wow, what an amazing story. We think about some of the things that we go through in life, and when it comes to your health, that's scary when somebody says we need to put you on an experimental drug. And
yeah, and as a physician, I know that to be true. Like, that means they don't really know, and they have no idea side effects, and nothing's working. And I was terrified.
Well, when you were talking about doing your research, what was one of the biggest sources of information that you found?
I was digging deep, like I said, at this point, because I didn't know what else to do. And I had come up with a book, and I started reading from Dr. Andrew Weil, who's been practicing this way for a long time. And he does integrative medicine. and he looks at healing in India and traditional Chinese medicine, and for years and years what they were doing. And all of these practices all included a mind-body component, whether it was yoga, it was meditation, it was mindfulness, it was part of the prescription to any healing plan of any chronic illness. And I started reading more and more about it, and I was fascinated. At first, I thought, this can't be. And I started delving more into it, and I read a book by a Harvard cardiologist in the 1975 named Dr. Herbert Benson, and he wrote about the relaxation response. And he noticed that when we go to see a doctor and our blood pressure is high, we call it white coat hypertension. And we blow it off like it's no big deal. And he started thinking, well, gosh, if our thoughts, the anxiety of seeing a doctor, are raising blood pressure, can our thoughts also lower blood pressure and get a relaxation response? And he was able to prove that, sure enough, with a relaxation response. And that there's so much research around that now. So as I learned about the research of the body and how it really dampens your parasympathetic nervous system and your cholinergic nervous system, and this is what's essential for healing all sorts of chronic illnesses, there was so much evidence I couldn't deny it anymore. And that's when I decided, all right, I got to do this myself.
Wow. And you had mentioned, I found an interview that you did some time ago, and you had mentioned the impact that Dr. Fuhrman's work had on you. How did you find him and his work? And tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so he was the first one that popped up on my feed on the internet when I was first exploring, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I'm in trouble. I need some help. And I started typing in autoimmune diseases and lifestyle, nutrition, anything. And Dr. Fuhrman's name was actually the first one that came up. And randomly, because I knew I never heard of him. I never heard of any of these people, so I didn't know anything at this point. And so he was talking about nutritarian diet and some of his autoimmune cases. And he was actually holding a weekend retreat in Princeton, New Jersey that week, like in a month, like very close, coming up. And so I hurried up and I bought a ticket and I signed up and I told my husband, hey, I'm going to this conference. I'm going to change my life and learn all about how to heal autoimmune diseases. And he was like, what? That's crazy. And so he started looking it up. And then he decided to come with me. And so we bought 2 tickets and we flew out there, like just not knowing what we were getting ourselves into. And it was wonderful. I mean, it was such a great weekend and we learned so much science about it. And that was our introduction into nutrition as medicine.
Wow. I love it.
Dr. Miller, do you also follow? I know there's a lot of talk on Facebook now about Dr. Brooke Goldner's lupus protocol. Is that something that was helpful to you as well?
So I didn't become aware of her until about 2 years ago. And so I first did Dr. Fuhrman's plan, Nutritarian for Autoimmune Disease, back in 2011. I started, and I've continued ever since. I've never veered off of being a full plant-based eater, doing one of these healing plans. Although when I didn't get my full results, I did. I contacted Dr. Brooke Goldner, and she's just absolutely lovely. And I did a couple. I actually did 3 of her programs with her. I struggled with them, though. Again, there's more to it than just food, and that it just kept coming down to the same thing that. You know, all these different plans, while you have to eat nourishing food and remove the pro-inflammatory food and heal your microbiome, like all of that is true, but that's not the only answer. And so that's where I kept running into problems. I was trying more and more different plans. You know, she's all raw vegan. Dr. Fuhrman did some cooked, some raw. You know, it's a very specific plan. And none of these were enough for me. And so it was the mind-body component that's really helped me along the way. So, but she was lovely, and I'm really glad I got to work with her and get to know her.
And you talked about that mind-body connection in your video on Saturday. So you had some techniques that you gave us for sort of clearing your mind and getting back into the moment. Are those the things that were most helpful to you?
They are, and I learned a lot, because at first everyone says, or you might hear this, you have to meditate. Everyone has to meditate. You have to meditate. Well, if you have a monkey mind and you're stressed out, it's really hard I don't know how to meditate. I don't know what that means. And I tried to go to these meditation classes that they have here in Aspen for free. And I was, trying to read about it. I bought a couple of books, John Kabat-Zinn, and I was trying to learn about it. And I was like, I can't really do this, right? And that's so many people feel that way. And I was missing the point, which was just to quiet my mind. Like, I didn't understand it. And so from there, I did take some classes through integrative medicine, through my fellowship training. I got to work with some Buddhist monks, and I really delved in. And what I've learned is, first of all, we're all different. And so what works for me is not going to work exactly for the next person. And what works for you, I may not actually work well with that. And so what I try to share, and when I work with my patients, what I try to share is that there's no one right way to do this. Don't feel pressure like, okay, if you want to heal, you got to meditate. No, like, it's a powerful tool and there's great science behind it. But if it's not working for you right now, then it's not your tool at the moment. So, and we all evolve and change. It might become something you can do down the road and you might enjoy it and find it useful. But we want to right away work on quieting our mind and helping our anxiety. And so the first tool I talk about, or one of the most important ones, is just deep breathing, deep, slow breath. And what that does is, when we do the slow inhalation and the really slow, even longer exhalation, it actually triggers our vagus nerve, which is our parasympathetic system, which is rest and restore and repair. It's when we digest and absorb nutrients the best. It's when we turn off all those stress hormones and we start to get a sense of calmness, clarity to our thinking. It all can happen through deep breathing. It's a powerful tool. And in fact, there's no medications right now to turn on the parasympathetic nervous system. There's medications we use to dampen the sympathetic nervous system, such as your benzodiazepines, but there's nothing for the parasympathetic. And in fact, for autoimmune diseases now, for rheumatoid arthritis, the doctors are now starting to do a vagus nerve implant to trigger the parasympathetic nervous system to help these rheumatoid arthritis patients, and it shows to be working. Well, that's an invasive procedure around your nervous system when the deep breathing does the exact same thing. Like, we can trigger that, all of us can, throughout the day, anytime we want, and the more we do it, the more powerful tool it becomes for us. And so I was sharing on the video how it can be a simple, there's so many different techniques for breathing, and so people can explore what really works for them. But a real simple way to get people started that I also still use is you just breathe in for 5 seconds, slow, just in, 2, 3, 4, 5, and out, 2, 3, 4, 5, and in, 2, 3, 4, 5, and out, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if you do that, 5 in, 5 out, 6 of those is 1 minute. And that's shown to already start to give benefits and to slow the nervous system stimulation and the anxiety reaction going on and all the stress hormones. And so I have people start with just 2 minutes a day, 1 minute in the morning, 1 minute at night, every day. It has to be routine though. And that's when I say just one thing for health. I ask people, please do this one thing. It's your homework. Write it down, put it on your calendar, whatever you need to do. Find a minute in the morning and a minute at night. And then whenever you need it, if you find yourself stressed out or anxious or worried or overwhelmed, you take that little break and you just do those breaths. And it's tremendously powerful. And that's the first tool that I try to introduce people, that you have time for it. It doesn't take long and it's simple.
Do you find that your patients are willing to consider that? Or are they open-minded enough to grasp that concept, that even though it's not a drug and it's not a procedure, it can actually be helpful?
Right. Good point. Good question. So yes, I actually do well with that. And the reason is, first of all, people seek me out because they know that I'm a lifestyle medicine, integrative medicine doctor. So they're going to be learning about nutrition and mind-body tricks that they can use. So they kind of are aware of that. But that being said, you're right. I do work with some lawyers. I would say I have a couple or high-end business people who think, you know, I'm not into that. That's hocus pocus. You know, I don't need to breathe. You know, my wife goes to yoga, but I don't need to do that. Or they say to me, I'm not really stressed, right? And so for those people, I actually have a tool. It's called HeartMap, and you can buy it on your phone. You can download it onto your computer. I think it's like $99 now, and you get a little ear monitor, and you measure your heart rate variability and your respiration, and you can tell the amount of sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system. And I can do this with my patients in my office. And so if they say, oh, I'm not stressed out, I don't need that, I can hook them up right there and have them breathe for me. And you usually see, I've never not seen this, that people are really in sympathetic overdrive. We're all so much sympathetic, and these two nervous systems should be in balance. Sympathetic is there, but we shouldn't be living there all day long. And we are in general, society. And so when they see that, it becomes real. And now they begin to realize, and right in front of them on the monitor, they start taking slow, deep breaths for me. And you can see pretty quickly within just a minute, it starts to line up. It goes from an erratic pattern into a nice, clear sine wave. And you can feel it in your body. This is why we start to get the results, and you can see it right in front of you. And sometimes I have to use this with my patients to convince them. And when they see it, now they begin to see, oh, wow, my breathing is putting me back in alignment. And now they become willing to do it for me. And so they do. They go home and they work on their sums. And I ask them in follow-up, are you doing your homework? Even a week out, I'll send them an email. We'll touch base, and I'll say, are you doing your homework? Are you doing your homework? So I'm on top of them to make sure they do it.
That's great. So they see it for themselves, though. They won't believe it until they see it for themselves.
Right. Some people are all about it. I have them take some breaths, and they already feel better, even after just a minute of calming down. I mean, we're not used to calming down in our lives. And when they do that in the office, they feel it right away, and they can see the power of it. So for some people, that's enough. For others, they need to see the data, which is fine. We're all different. We're wired differently. So that's great. Whatever people helps them understand what's going on.
Right. Do you think that would work for blood pressure in general? The same way it's
Absolutely. Yeah, and so that's the relaxation response that Dr. Benson wrote about in 1975 from Harvard, and that it does lower blood pressure. And I use that on my patients. So I have them sit there, and I have them take slow, deep breaths, and I always say, go to your happy place, wherever you're relaxed and calm, and there's no problems, you're not worried. And I have them do that. And if it comes back high, we'll do it a little longer. We'll just let them really relax and slow down and do their slow breath in, slow breath out. And if I repeat it about 3 minutes later, it almost always drops by whatever amount, depending on who they are and how high it was. But you can see the blood vessels begin to relax. So yeah, it's a powerful tool.
I do that when I have very few occasions to go to the doctor's office, thank goodness. But I know myself, so I know that you're right.
Yeah, I do it too, right? I don't want to be stressed when they're getting my blood pressure and have it be high. So I breathe my way through it and lower it a little bit. It really does work.
I know for a fact it does. But I know that people often have that, that hocus pocus kind of attitude sometimes when it's not a pill or a procedure. So if that helped you more, how much of your transformation with diet would you say helped your situation? Even though you found that it wasn't totally diet, how did diet impact you?
Well, it definitely did. And, it's funny, we break it up so much. It's diet, it's stress reduction, it's this, it's that. The reality is in these healing practices, whether it be India or, again, China, some of these practices have been around for thousands of years. They never separate it. They use diet in all of these people. They use the mind body. They use herbs, and they use acupuncture, whatever it is, and it's a whole picture. It's hard to say, well, this is from the acupuncture, this is from the diet. It's hard to know. that being said, oh yeah, when I first met Dr. Fuhrman, I overhauled my diet 100%, no question, and it's been wonderful. I love how I eat, and I'm a strong advocate for a plant-based diet and nutritarian diet, which is what Dr. Fuhrman is, and I wouldn't go back. I mean, I'm so happy with everything about it. So I wanted that perfect Cinderella story, right? I changed my diet, Brooke Goldner story. 3 months later, all my symptoms are gone. My labs are normal. My doctor can't believe it. So I was hoping for that after I changed my diet. And when I didn't get that, I was disappointed. And, you know, I kept looking, what else is going on? How come I'm not where I want to be? And so that's where I kept pushing. But yeah, the diet's been amazing.
So you consider it all aspects to give the most benefit. So the mind.
I do, and now, yeah, when patients come to see me for something, you know, they'll say, "Oh, I want you to help me with my diet," and I'll talk to them, and I can feel how stressed they are, or how anxious, or how busy their lives are, and so when I start their plan after we do an assessment, a physical exam, and all that, I always start with stress reduction. I always start with deep breathing, or maybe it's yoga, maybe it's HeartMath, maybe it's biofeedback, whatever mind-body trick that is going to help this person. I always start with that. And I ask all of my patients to do that, to do 3 things every single day. And I start with that. We spend the first 10 minutes talking about the importance of these mind-body things and how they can choose. And I give them several ideas and let them play with it and figure out what works for them, develop their own plan. But I start that. And then after we finish that, then we dive into diet, because I don't want to run out of time and not send them home with their mind-body plan, because I know diet, for so many of my patients, I wasn't getting the results with them that I wanted, with just perfect results. You know, everybody to switch and be so happy and disease 100% reversed. And I've added the mind-body, and it's really helped a lot.
Good.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Miller, how much of your healing would you say can be attributed to one of the techniques that you mentioned, which was spending time outdoors? And for me, that means a little bit of communing with nature.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, this has all helped me. I'm a different person than I was just a couple of years ago, even after I was plant-based. I'm so much calmer. I'm less reactive. Things don't stress me nearly the way they used to. I now have coping mechanisms, and it's been all of this. So I shared some of my top 5 things that I love to do, which one of them is going outside and convening in nature. And what I had to learn to do is, I used to go outside all the time. I love to hike. And I went outside, you know, I had an hour, 2 hours, and I would do a quick run or a quick hike up a mountain and run back down it. But it was always about exercise, right? And I never stopped and slowed down. And I thought, here I am, I'm a doctor, I'm getting healthy, I changed my diet, I exercise. And it was a friend of mine who came out to visit me, and he said, you need to calm down. You're a spaz, like, you're so hyper. And I started thinking, he sensed that in me just by talking to him for a little while. And so he's like, just go for a walk, slow outside. Like, don't exercise, just be there. And so I did. I started just going outside. And of course, I live in a beautiful spot, just like we all do, and have nature everywhere around me. And so I just started going outside slowly with my dog. And I don't call it a walk or a hike anymore. I call it a meander, because we're just meandering. Like, there's no real rhyme or reason. It's really slow. And I'm just feeling the air and smelling the trees and listening to the animals or the birds or the wind or the leaves rustle. And I'm just there. And that has been I just feel nourished afterwards. So lovely.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's important. A lot of the people that I come across are in the business and corporate world. And they just do not take the time to do that unless, like you said, they're running or, you know, just moving from one place to another in this quick pace. And so what do you tell your patients when you try and get this across to them, that this is something good to add to their routine?
Yes, good question. So I always start with the science because I'm a physician. I'm science-based myself, and I needed the science. I wasn't willing to just start breathing that, that's crazy. And so, or going out in nature, like who has time for that when I got a busy life, right? So I show them the science. I show them how it taps into the parasympathetic nervous system. It turns off these stress hormones. It lowers blood pressure. There's so incredibly much data. And there's data how you can, rewire the brain and you can regrow nerve cells and, you can spread the connections at least. And so you can, there's just so much science that after you start to see some of that and you start to see the healing of, the people who use it for healing or just for daily life, just for navigating the stressors of life, that makes it a lot easier for most people. I would not say all people, but it does for most people after they see the science. And then I start giving them several tools to choose from. So there's not like there's one thing they all have to do. And they start picking and choosing what works or just something to think about. And so I started thinking, maybe if they just want to start slow for me, but they have to start with one thing a day to actively relax. And when I ask people, what do you do to actively relax? They're like, what? I watch TV. I'm like, nope, that doesn't count. You're not actively relaxing your mind and rewiring your parasympathetic nervous system with the TV. And so I kind of go into some of the activities, and then they're like, oh, I don't do that. I don't have time for that. And so we start building that in. So then they get excited about it, like this is the new plan, and they're curious to see what it'll do. But again, you have to remember the patients are self-selected in my practice. So I'm a consultant, and so they're either referred by their physicians or they're self-referred or referred from a friend or a family member. And so they're coming to see me because they want to know lifestyle techniques. I think if I were a primary physician and they were just coming in for a regular visit and I started on this, it would be a different story. I probably would have a lot harder time convincing people. But given where I am in the situation, it's a lot easier for me, I think.
I totally get that. People come to you and they're already seeking answers that they think you have. So that gives you a leg.
Right.
Yeah.
It does. Because a primary doctor, I think, would have a lot harder time selling it to some people than I do. But I'm lucky there.
And what would you tell a doctor who is, just coming into this space, wanting to know more? Are there any resources that you would point them to get them to quickly come up the learning curve?
Once they start seeing the science themselves, they can totally understand where we're going with this. And so I always refer them to things like Jon Kabat-Zinn. He's in Maryland, I believe he is, and he's at the medical school and started a big center for mindfulness-based stress reduction. It has an international program, and even I do a lot with wellness for physicians and health programs, and like all these different programs. From Stanford has an amazing wellness program that uses Jon Kabat-Zinn, mindfulness-based stress reduction, for their physicians. It's fabulous. So there's programs like that another doctor can look at online. They can participate. They can read about the science, read the studies. They can see some of the results of it, see what other people are thinking about it. And so right away, you're like, wow, how come I didn't know this before? This is, and I've given talks to physicians, and so many people flood me afterwards, and they want to know more, and they're curious, and these links. And Harvard has a program. Mayo Clinic has a big program. Duke has a big program. And so some of the physicians can read that, and they can definitely read works of people like Jon Kabat-Zinn, which is wonderful, and Andrew Weil, which really helps me a lot too. And so they can kind of jumpstart and get into it.
That is awesome. And do you typically find that doctors are receptive to this information? And if not, what's their biggest issue?
Good question. It depends on the doctor and why they're asking me about it. If they're looking to help themselves get healthy, they're usually interested in it. If they are just curious about it, They may not be interested or not really believe it. But again, I send them to the data. Doctors are data-driven, right? We're evidence-based physicians. We're supposed to be. And so when you start looking at the evidence from major medical schools, I mean, Harvard, Yale, Stanford, Duke, these are major, Mayo Clinic, these are major medical centers that have huge mind-body centers popping up. Georgia, Emory out there in Atlanta, Georgia, has a huge mind-body program, doing quite a bit of data. And so once they start looking at that, if they're really curious, they have to look at the evidence. And then, I mean, it's right there in front of them. So I don't do any convincing. I don't need to convince them. I send them to the evidence, and it's all right there. So, but then that being said, there's people who don't even ask me about it. They don't care. They don't want to know. And that's fine too. I don't, I'm not going to force it to anyone to learn about it. So.
Well, we have Dr. Arjun in the audience with us. Would you like to ask Dr. Miller a question or converse on this topic?
Absolutely, Dr. Miller. It's been a pleasure just listening to your story. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes,
Yes.
I've been enjoying listening to your story. I myself, I eat plant-based and I do yoga, meditation. I found a big difference in my personal health, and I teach that to my
Awesome.
Yeah. But it's quite fascinating, the journey, and it made a big difference for me in how I manage myself and my stress levels and all. But what I would like to learn, what I would like to learn from you is I'm well versed with the science of the plant-based eating. Even though I'm doing yoga and meditation and all, for the last 2 years, I haven't delved much into the science of it, the data of it. If I want to get more data and science, where would you suggest that I start to look into?
Do you mean the data for the mind body, for the yoga, the meditation? Is that what you're talking about? Yeah.
Yes.
So I learned quite a bit about it through Dr. Andrew Weil. He's got the Arizona Center for Integrative Medicine, it's called. And so if you go to their website, Arizona Center for Integrative Medicine, they have quite a bit about mind body and the evidence, and they send you to different articles and different studies. And one of the doctors, his name is Richard Davidson. He's at University of Wisconsin in Madison, and he has done quite a bit of the mind body. He speaks internationally, and I started, he does the neuroplasticity of the brain and how all the meditation, like the Buddhist monks, had huge frontal lobes and prefrontal cortex, which is your higher thinking center, and that just a yogi, and I call myself a yogi now, and I'm relatively new to yoga, but I love it. I do it regularly. They show just a 6 to 8 week program. You start just a little bit to develop different parts of the brain and to change the GABA and different neurotransmitters. Fascinating. So he's done a lot of it. Dr. Richie Davidson over at University of Wisconsin in Madison. And I found that through the University of Arizona Center for Integrative Medicine website. So that was a big one for me, where I started, and from there I kept expanding. And then I also read quite a bit about Dr. Kabat-Zinn and his work up in Maryland, and he's got the mindfulness-based stress reduction program. It's an 8-week program, and there's a lot of data surrounding that, a lot. And so it's really hard to argue it. Like, I haven't had a single physician or anyone tell me no, because there's just too many studies. It's like repeatable, large people showing the same thing. I mean, it can be, it follows all of our standards. And so those are places I probably would send you to start.
That's great. So right now, the way you're practicing, you have the patient self-selecting and coming to you. How can, what we are doing in our community is we're actually doing 3-day immersion programs for
great.
Yeah, for teaching plant-based way of transitioning to a plant-based way of lifestyle. Recently, we started doing meditation and yoga programs, but we are getting teachers from Montreal, and they're coming and teaching how to the participants how to do the yoga and meditation. But how could we do something like this in our existing medical system?
Yeah, I'm still figuring that out myself as well. I love what you're doing with a 3-day retreat, because that's how I started too, throwing myself into retreat. So do some yoga, some meditation, some mindfulness, and some gratitude, some journaling, like all of that, and learn about plant-based food. It's a perfect combination in my mind. I'm still struggling with it too, though. I have some good yoga classes I've gone to, and some therapeutic yoga, some healing touch yoga, things like this that I can use for different patients just because I know about them. But I would love to get more programs up and running as well. And so I'm figuring that out also.
Mm-hmm.
What community are you? Where do you practice?
I'm in Newfoundland, Canada.
Oh, okay. Great. That's awesome.
Yeah. Northeast Canada.
Yeah, love it. Very cool. Huh. Yeah, no, I'm struggling with the same thing as you. I think figuring out how to get more comprehensive programs. So
yes, one is comprehensive programs, and also making it available for larger community.
Yes.
Because like what you are doing, what I am doing right now, we're trying to do as much as we can, but unless it is embraced by the mainstream, and we can get it covered by the insurance companies and the US insurance companies here. Government is the main payer. Unless it is embraced by the payers, I think we'll be limited with how much of this invaluable message is just not reaching to whom it is needed.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's awesome that you can get a lot of it covered, though. That is huge, and that really helps. We can get some of it covered here, too. Like acupuncture, we can get covered for some people. And yoga we're working on, but people can usually sign up for classes for not too expensive, or we have a lot of free classes. And meditation, we have free classes around here. But you're right. That's a big limitation, making it accessible. And people have to be able to fit it into their schedules. So, it's a real challenge. But there's also like home YouTube videos now. And like, I just try to make as much diversity so if someone's on the road or traveling, or there's something they can do, or, people in my community, they can go to classes and do. Yeah, it's tricky.
Awesome exchange there. Now I'm noticing
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Thanks.
I'm noticing that we have Dr. Bruce Bowen on with us as well. How are you this evening?
Very good. Thank you.
Good, good. Did you have a question for Dr. Miller?
Well, we were talking about the gut bacteria and the effect that they have on health, and there's a lot of interesting research being done at Vanderbilt University Medical Center about that as well. And I'm just curious what Dr. Miller's comments are on that.
Hi, Dr. Bowen.
Hi.
Do you mean in the gut microbiome and autoimmunity in general, or do you mean with mind-body techniques in the microbiome?
Well, actually, probably both, actually. If there's any data.
So the microbiome, there actually is. So the microbiome is a very hot topic right now. There's just like you were saying, Vanderbilt, there's studies popping up everywhere right now. Like, it's become very much aware that the microbiome plays a huge role in our health or lack of health, and especially autoimmunity, or not especially, but definitely autoimmunity. And so there is some science that which certain bacteria are triggered with certain autoimmune diseases. And it's been shown that as the microbiome gets disrupted through antibiotics or poor diet, processed foods, or steroids, or things like this, that the microbiome changes and becomes less diverse and starts to break down, and it no longer produces that thick membranous coating it's supposed to, the biofilm, which lines and protects the mucous membrane, or lines and protects the endothelium, the inside of the lumen of the intestinal tract. And so we know for sure, and I do some microbiome testing on, not all the time, but every now and then on some of my patients, and we can see that our autoimmune patients tend to have very narrow microbiome, and they're lacking in some of the healthy, the bifidobacteria, the lactobacillus, and I see this in them. And I can often tell how they eat too. If they're not eating lots of beans and raw vegetables and high fiber foods, I can see it right away, even before I know anything about their diet, based on the diversity of their microbiome. And so we start to diversify the diet and add the fiber and the prebiotic foods back into this person, and help them get that healthy biofilm and diverse microbiome and the healthy, good bacteria of their own. And some of it's done with probiotics, but much more is done with prebiotic food. And so there's quite a bit of data popping up, and I love it myself too. I'm fascinated by it. So I'm always trying to read what I can about autoimmunity and the microbiome. And then as far as stress, so stress actually changes our microbiome. And this is like such interesting data. And I will have to find you the studies exactly on that. But our thoughts, if we have thoughts, it's sent to the back of our minds from our frontal cortex, where we have the thought, to the back, to the hippocampus, and releases all the way down to our adrenals, right, to the pituitary and the adrenals, and releases all these stress hormones. Well, it turns out that, our serotonin, 90% of our serotonin is made in our gut, and it's directly communicating with our bacteria in whatever way they communicate. And so our thoughts are changing the microbiome, and they have found this in studies, that through mind-body activity, through changing our activity, our thought process, and how we perceive stress, that we change our microbiome. And they've done studies in people who are stressed out, or self-reported stress, but they report that they're stressed, and they look at the microbiome, and people who are not stressed, and people who change, start doing these mind-body activities. And it's fascinating. It's fascinating. And so to me, that's another big thing. When I'm stressed out now, I think, I'm changing my microbiome. Deep breath, slow down, calm down, laugh, something, anything. Don't ruin your microbiome, all this hard work you've done. Sleep changes our microbiome as well. So it's been shown, if you get less than 6 hours of sleep for a couple nights in a row, your microbiome is completely different. Those bacteria are different in the morning from the nighttime, from if you don't sleep. This is why you need a diverse microbiome. So you have the right ones popping up, and to help you digest and, get rid of toxins and all the effects that the microbiome has in our body. So yeah, it's really interesting stuff.
Yeah, there was some really interesting stuff. When irritable bowel disease was first diagnosed in the United States, it was unheard of in Europe for years and years. And it made you wonder how much of that was our stressful lifestyle in the United States creating a new disease.
Right, exactly. That's a good, perfect example. Yep. So interesting. But it's I love it because I'm interested in it, and I think it's fascinating. But at the same time, it's the lifestyle stuff that you teach, that I teach, that so many of us are trying to teach, eat good fiber-rich foods, whole foods, and work, don't work on our stress and how we perceive stress, and get quality restorative sleep and exercise. And these factors, without even knowing about it, one of the ways that they're all working together synergistically is they're changing our microbiome. And so now we're beginning to understand why these lifestyle factors work so well and how they're working. So it's really cool to think about that.
Yeah, and you didn't mention it, but maybe you did earlier. The Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine has got a lot of great information, and their website is phenomenal. And that might
be true. Thank you. That's a great reference. Thank you. Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, PCRM.org.
Yeah.
Do you have some other specific doctors or websites or movies that you often tell your patients about that you think they should follow?
Yeah, well, for the, since we're talking mind body today, there's a new film that just came out, that a documentary, and I think you can still get it online before they stop that, and then you have to download it. But it's called Interconnected, and it's about a bigger picture and how the way we live our lives, our stress and our thoughts, and where our bodies are all connected, and we are one organ. For so long, science separated mind and body. And when I was in medical school, they were separate. And now we know that that's the farthest thing from the truth, that we're so connected and it really affects us. So it's a really interesting documentary that's brand new right now, Interconnected, it's called. That's a good mind-body one that I like to share with people. And then, of course, all the ones about food, forks over knives and eating you alive and what the health, and so there's so many of those. Food Inc. I've enjoyed all of those. I've learned so much from all of those. But I like sharing the mind body part too. Sometimes I think it's forgotten, which it's important, so important to talk about food and exercise, but we're stressed out, and that's not acceptable anymore, to live this stressed out.
Oh, I'm sure that's one of the ways that the blue zones, the people are all similar in the blue zone areas, because they have ways of dealing with their stress through community and social events, and then the wine at 5, which is decided to
And it's so true, because for a long time when I read about the blue zones, I thought, oh, this is so great, and I thought, well, those people aren't stressed out. I live a stressful life, though, so that doesn't apply to me. But that's the farthest from the truth. Of course they're stressed out. Like, everybody has stressors in their life. They just have ways to deal with it. Just like you said, they have that close social interaction, and they have family and friends and community and people to count on. And that is like one of the biggest things. And, that study came out recently from Harvard, and it said, it came down to the number 1 and 2 factors affecting health, long-term health and healthy aging. It wasn't our diet. It wasn't if we had diabetes. It wasn't if we had high blood pressure. It wasn't even if we smoked or if we exercised. It was number 1. Number 2 was how many social interactions we made in a day. Whether we said hi to a mailman, and we said hi to the person in the grocery store, we talked to our neighbors. That was this number 2 thing that affected long-term healthy aging. And the number 1 thing was how many close relationships, or how important your close relationships were. If you had, even just like 2 or 3, but close, that you could count on no matter what. The people who did the best in the study, and they looked at Harvard grads as well as people in the Boston community who were just, whoever, just workers from the Boston community. And they followed them over like 70 years. And they found across all socioeconomic status, it didn't matter. It was how close the relationships were, like how meaningful it was to them, and how many people they interacted with in the day. Fascinating. I mean, it's social connection. It's so important.
I definitely can see how that would be the case.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Miller, do you have any?
Come on up.
Do you have any stories you can tell us about patients that you've worked with, other than yourself? Here I am. Other than yourself, that where you have helped people who had perhaps a serious disease, and then you helped them reduce their stress and the healing results. I know it's anecdotal, but those kind of stories always meaning.
Yeah.
So share some of those.
Yeah, thank you. I actually work with a lot of autoimmune patients. I think they seek me out because they hear my story. And I saw a 24-year-old Hispanic female, and she was lovely. I mean, she is lovely. She's absolutely lovely. And she came in, and she did not speak English, and I don't speak Spanish. So I was like, oh, man, this is going to be so hard. I don't know how I'm going to tell her this whole plan. But we had an interpreter who was wonderful. And so I told her, we talked, and I learned all about her. And then I told her about nutrition and the power of food for healing. And I told her about mind, body, and I wanted her to, and now she, mind you, she had 3 children and a husband who was working full time. So she, you know, she was home with the children. She had no free time, and they didn't have much money, so not a lot of resources. And I sent her to Walmart to buy her food, you know, whatever was cheapest, like just you can buy it frozen, you can, you know, just whatever. And she comes back and her husband had left her and she felt terrible. Her whole left side of her body had gone numb. She had 0 feeling. Her doctor wanted to put her on high dose steroids and Plaquenil and, you know, some of the basic meds to get her started. And she hadn't started them yet, but she couldn't even sit down. She was so stiff and achy. She couldn't even sit down, and we had to help her. And I started talking to her about what was going on in her life, obviously her stress, right? And so I said, do you have anyone, a neighbor, a friend, anyone who comes over and helps you with the children? And she did. And so I said, all I want is 5 minutes of the day is your time. I want you to take these slow, deep breaths. I want you to get outside without your children and just look at the sky. Just take the breath. Just breathe big. Just be mindful. Be in the moment. Don't think about everything bad in the future, everything bad in the past. Just think about that moment, whatever you're sensing. And we went through the interpreter, and I explained all this to her. And we didn't change the nutrition plan. We just changed her mind, body. And I also recommended free YouTube videos for yoga, because yoga, there's actually pretty good data. Yoga and rheumatoid arthritis and joint pain, that it decreased pain by, people reported 30% less pain just by going to a regular yoga class. I think it was 3 days a week. And so I asked her to start doing it 3 days a week. And just a free video at home in her mat. She could have her 3 children right there in the room, but just to do the yoga as well as the 5 minutes to herself. And then I didn't hear from her for about 3 months. And I thought, oh man, I got to check on her. I have no idea how this poor woman is doing. She was in so much pain. She didn't understand anything I was saying because it's a different language. And I got to offer anything I can to try to help her. And I reached out to her and I got the interpreter, and she was like, you won't believe it. Her pain was gone. She could move her left, all her stiffness was gone. It had melted, literally melted away in those 3 months. She was following the diet. She was doing her yoga classes regularly, and she was taking her 5 minutes, which became like 20 minutes because her neighbor came and helped her. So she was spending her time to herself, and she was just learning to cope basically with everything going on. It slowed, I think she slowed her parasympathetic nervous system by all these activities, and she had no pain, 0, like on no meds. And even I still can't believe how remarkable her recovery was. Like, and since then I've seen so many of her friends who come to see me for different things. And so, yeah, it's just a wonderful story.
Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you.
And she's not alone. I see a lot of autoimmune people, and I see IBS people, and you know, it's such a component, especially once you feel bad, then you worry about it even more, and it only intensifies and worsens. It's a vicious cycle for us all. I know, I've experienced it. And so we have to try to calm that cycle down for all of us, you know, everyone with chronic pain or worries about finances or worries about our family members as they're aging or our kids or whatever it is. We need a way to calm it down. And so I see so many people feel better just with that alone. And I have another patient who was so stressed out. He's one of the ones who did not believe in any of this. It was voodoo medicine for him. And I hooked him up to HeartMath, and I showed him. And after that, he began to see it. He actually bought his own HeartMath app so he could do it at home when he hooked up his gear. And he followed it regularly. He sent me emails all about it. Well, he turned around. I couldn't even believe how much. He was a very high-strung, very high professional, you know, leader in his business. And he had gut issues that he'd been worked up all over the country, Mayo Clinic. He'd been worked up in Denver, University of Colorado, and of course, all his doctors here, huge, outstanding workouts, and they never found anything, but he was miserable. And it almost completely resolved with him adding the mind body. I mean, I did add the nutrition, but we struggled with that for a long time. And then when we added the mind body, I was like, I really think this is a component. And, you know, he wasn't willing. And I finally like begged him, like, just do this for a month for me. And huge change. I mean, he does it regularly now all the time.
So, Dr. Miller, have you ever read the book called They Can't Find Anything Wrong?
No, but that sounds like a familiar thing.
It was written by a doctor who is a gut specialist who sees patient after patient that is actually coming to him for gut specialty, but they can't find anything wrong, and then he treats them for stress.
Yep. Interesting. I'll have to look for that. Thank you.
Yeah, it's called They Can't Find Anything Wrong, and I don't recall the author right now, but you'll see it if you Google it.
Yeah, I will. I'll look at it. Yeah. It seems true for a lot of people, right? I mean, and what I tell my patients, because they're frustrated. They did this huge workup, and the doctors can't find anything. They're all upset. They want to know what it is, and they want an answer, and they want a treatment. But I always say, well, if you find something, that means you have pathological changes already in your body. The fact that we're not finding anything, we don't have pathological changes yet. At this point, it's still functional. It's a function, something that's going on. And that's where food and mind, body, and sleep and exercise and the power of these lifestyle medicine, maybe some herbs, can really play a bigger role. And so it's much simpler to correct these functional abnormalities. Once we find pathology, like me, with all my abnormal blood work, I mean, it's horrible. It takes longer, whereas when people don't yet have it, I see them correct easier. So I look forward to reading that book and hear what his experiences are and what he can share with me. That's great.
Dr. Miller?
Yes.
Do you do any of your work in group settings, or are you doing them on one-on-one setting?
Yeah, I do a lot of group settings. I have found groups to be so much more powerful than my one-on-ones. So classes, I love it too. I feel like I enjoy it. My patients seem to enjoy each other's company and the social connectedness and the support. So I'm doing more and more group classes and loving them.
That's great. And which HeartMath apps do you recommend?
So I thought it was just called HeartMath.
Okay.
And a lot of the research has been done at Harvard. I think it's a trademark. So if you just type in HeartMath, it comes up, and you can buy it. I bought it for my computer. You can get one that you use for your office, or you can get the app. I think the app is like $99 maybe, and then for the one for your office, they vary in if you get a package, they do different things. They have different ear sensors or finger sensors, or you can do different things with them. So you can see what might work for you. But it's been a really great tool to help some of the people who aren't quite there yet.
Gotcha. And how can we connect with you?
Good question. Thank you. So I have a website. It's Eat and Live Healthfully, EATANDLIVE, healthfully, HealthFully.com, eatandlivehealthfully.com. And I have my phone numbers listed there, my email, and I'm in the process of updating my website, but I share recipes and different tools, and when there's classes going on, I share that, so people can join in. There's cooking classes and mind-body classes, things like that.
Yeah, you have a beautiful website.
Thank you.
And for the rest of our audience, the information that Dr. Miller just shared is part of the email that went out on Saturday. And so if you go to our website, Just One Thing for Health, and go to the week 12 information, you will find all of that, plus some additional information that Dr. Miller gave us that we've shared. And there's just a plethora of information there from Dr. Miller and the other doctors that we've had on. And we are so excited that she's here with us. She's in Colorado, where many of our doctors that are part of the program actually are. And now we're even in Canada. So,
Yeah. Newfoundland, that's awesome.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll have to talk, Dr. Arjun, and find out what
Yes.
your specialty is and get you on one of our upcoming broadcasts.
Yeah, looking
Yeah,
forward
we'd
to
love
it.
to hear more about what you're doing up there. That's awesome.
Yeah. We'll do
Yeah.
it in the next few weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Dr. Bruce, same thing for you.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Nice to meet you, Dr. Bruce.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice to meet you too.
This is a great platform.
I just came from the gym before the conference, so I'm feeling really good.
Awesome. Awesome. Ride that high. Yep.
That's right. Okay.
Yes, yes. And Lisa, is there anything else that comes to mind that you want to kind of put out here as our time is wrapping up here?
Well, I just think it's fascinating that doctors now, like Dr. Chris Miller, are observing the fact that it's not just one thing, it's the whole body all combined, you know, for spiritual and mental and physical and nutritional. I'm glad to hear that people are catching on and patients are getting well. That's really the bottom line. Patients are getting well. It's wonderful to hear.
Fun.
I'm glad.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I would say, to wrap it up for my part, is that there's so many different techniques. So I talked about meditation today. I talked about mindfulness and being outdoors and being in the moment and slowing down and community and connectedness. But there's so many things, from a warm bath and with essential oils, or creativity. Is, you know, we lose our creativity as we're students and we're so busy, we don't have time. But if someone loves to paint or to draw or to play an instrument or build something, all of those things are wonderful.
That's what she does. Draws.
Yeah, that's so wonderful. And music therapy, there's a lot of data behind music therapy. And dancing. I had a patient in France yesterday. We were on the phone, and I told her to dance, and she started laughing. She goes, "We don't dance around the house in France. That's weird." And I said, "It's weird here too, but I want you to start doing it because it makes us happy if it's something you enjoy, right?" So whatever it is that someone enjoys, like taking a warm bath does not speak to me. I don't like that, but some people it does. So there's so many techniques that we can induce this relaxation and this all.
Well, dancing is one of the most powerful things. I mean, dancing is one of the most powerful things in the world, and we don't do it enough with music.
Yeah, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. So we're dancing a lot more at my house now, I'll tell you that.
That's why we have parties.
Yeah, that's true. You could dance at a party too.
Well, I just want to take a moment to say thank you, everyone, for being here, for being a part of this Just One Thing for Health Physicians on Call with Dr. Chris Miller, and to all of those in our live audience, for all of those who are watching behind the scenes or watching the replay. We're glad you're here. We are extremely excited that you're able to get this information, and we want you to come back and join us again, because we're doing this for everyone who is out there who's looking for answers and doesn't know where to turn. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Dr. Miller. I've totally enjoyed this, and I know that everyone else has too. The interaction's just been fabulous. And to our doctors and others in the audience, thanks for joining us. And come back again next week. We'd love to have you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
It's been fun. Thank you. My pleasure.
Have a happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, and eat wisely.
Thank you.
Yes.
And don't be stressed about it.
Yes.
That's true.
As a matter of fact, over the past couple of weeks, we have been intentionally sharing. Part of the email has recipes, and we've been intentionally sharing some recipes for things that you can substitute out into, from the traditional Thanksgiving dinner into healthier alternatives. So make sure you check out those recipes. And they're great for, you know, we're coming up on Christmas and the New Year's. You can use them then too. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.